but how good you are because now you're part of this group, and how evil everyone else is. And that you are the only saved group. Everyone else is from the 73 that's going to Jahannam. وَبِئْسَ الْمَصِيرُ. So therefore, now referring to the Book of Allah and the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam became only for beautification, for just fillers, to make things look good, and to give our people underline that we belong to great titles. That's the way, while we insist on giving everyone's, diminish them from any titles or anything, and therefore being a Muslim to any of these groups was not good enough. What kind of Muslim are? What group do you belong to? What is it? And remember that every sect now, they claim, every sect, including the Khawarij, by the way. Not only I'm talking about Ahlul Sunnah. Yani within Ahlul Sunnah, everyone claims to follow the Book and the Sunnah. That's just granted, because that's the name. The name indicates that even the Khawarij and the Shia and all these groups within the Islamic, under the Islamic umbrella, they all claim to follow the Book and the Sunnah. So the claim, there's nothing new behind the claim, but the substantiation of the claim is what is lacking. Alright, who's benefiting from all that? Those who don't like Muslims. And let me say this, not because they made this, like we'd like to say, oh, they did this, all these things. It's because of our own doings, because our own focusing on these little things, while we're forgetting the general imaniyat, the general principles of iman, the general ahkam, the general akhlaq of Islam. Being good, being decent, being truthful, being honest, being fair, being just. All these things that we were supposed to be doing after the iman in Allah and His books and messengers and the Day of Judgment, etc., etc. Al-Qada wal-Qadar. After doing the ahkam of salah and siyam and zakah and hajj. Important things. What is the maqsad? What is the objective of the sharia for us? What are we here to do? What is our purpose? But we lost our purpose in these circulars that we do. What are the reasons that made us so fragmented, as you would want me to talk about? Well, I'm just going to enumerate a few. I jotted them down just so I don't forget them. Maybe about 20 of them or so. Number one, lots of forged and inauthentic hadith, or extremely weak, that we prioritized and we put there. And again, I say self-criticism is important. So we're criticizing ourselves as part of the treatment. And I know the treatment is painful, like I said. What are these things? Especially in aqaid. Again, with the reservation on the word aqidah, because imaniyat is what came in the book, iman is what came in the book and the sunnah. Like anyway, the books of aqaid now that contain all kinds of things, that was one of the source of issues and problems that we are still fighting about. Yeah, some things like, for example, what's in the book of sunnah for Abdullah ibn Ahmad Hanbal, that Allah Ta'ala looks like a shab amrad, a young man, clean shaved, etc. Well, that's all, that's kufr, in a sense. Anthropomorphism, likening Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to His creation. The difference in aqaid also had its implication on the sciences of hadith. What does that mean? Well, you all know the way we authenticate the hadith is based on the transmitters and the narrators of the hadith. And there's a science to authenticate or discard the narrators called jarh wa ta'dil, ilm al-jarh wa ta'dil. Well, unfortunately, we've used the people's sort of where they stand in matters of issues of faith to also use the science or the weapons of authentication and discarding as weapons against those people. حتى Ibn Hajar rahimahullah, Imam Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, Imam Hajar mentions that he says وقفت على ابن بطة على ابن بطة وقفت, I read something about Ibn Battah said اقشعر له جلدي, that I had goosebumps from, in where basically he made a notion that Ibn Battah mentioned, he tried to change the one of the narrations put a different line of transmitters that are authentic to substantiate a point of hadith that is rejected, supposedly alleged to Mas'ud, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talked to Musa and he has wool things clothed on him. Obviously this is again kufr, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, nothing is like him subhanahu wa ta'ala. ليس كمثله شيء لم يكن له كفوا أحد. That's the second thing. So he says basically Hajjah is trying to say there's no need for him to sort of forge these things so he can prove a point. That's the first aspect, and that's the heaviest aspect. The second aspect, or the third, is contradictions. What do we mean by contradictions? Well, you see the groups all calling for the book and the sunnah. But when you come down to the beginning of the studies, it's always everything else before the book and the sunnah. By the time you're 50, maybe you'll get to the book and the sunnah if you start out at 20. You see a second sign of the groups, you see the groupings and then the group mentalities, and maybe close to cult mentality sometimes, where they are warning from being who are extreme, yani excessive. I don't mean extreme now in the geopolitical or the political term. I mean extreme in their thought. So, be careful with the extreme. The Sufis are extremes, for example. The Shias are extreme. And then you come to us also on our side, but you see us also going extreme in our shuyukh and our people and giving them lots of titles, while we're not very generous with titles on the people that we don't like. You see the groups and the grouping mentality now calling for people to be with the jama'ah whenever they are the jama'ah. But whenever they're not with the jama'ah, the majority is not with them, they say, well, praised are those who are few. We use the weapons of ijma', and I don't want to go into that because it's a little bit technical. But whenever the ijma' does not come our way, we say, no, there's no ijma'. What are you talking about? Which ijma'? Who made ijma' with who? You see also the mistake is all, like I said, even with the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum ajma'in, may Allah be pleased with them. We stand firmly against the Shia who denounce the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum, and rightfully so. Yet when it comes to Ali ibn Abi Talib and those who cursed him in the old days, we just give him some excuses and we let it go. We don't want to talk about it. Contradictions. Yani names. Haris bin Uthman, Thawr bin Zayd, etc., etc. Fifth is the reason for our fragmentations, not only contradictions in our practices, but actually not understanding the evidence of the other. We simply don't want to listen to you. If I belong to this group, I don't want to listen to you. It doesn't matter what you're going to tell me. You can stand here and talk for half an hour, I'm not going to listen. We're not willing to listen to the evidence and the substantiation of the other. My father, rahmatullahi ta'ala, used to tell me, and that's what his shuyukh used to tell him, if you can't articulate your opponent's points as well as you can articulate your own, you haven't even started to understand. If we are on the haqq, we have nothing to worry about. Okay. Number 6 or 7, doing dhulm to those who we disagree with. Dhulm. First, what kind of dhulm? I call it intellectual terrorism. What does that mean? Someone I disagree with, regardless what they are, within our groups as Ahlus Sunnah al-Jama'ah, and then within the Muslim Ummah. We start doing intellectual terrorism to them, demonizing them. Oh, they're trying to do this. Oh, they hate Islam. Oh, they hate the Sunnah. Oh, they hate this. These people are enemies of the Sunnah, enemies of the Hadith, all these titles. No one who believes in Allah and His Prophet ﷺ is an enemy of Allah and His Prophet ﷺ. Intellectual terrorism. What does that mean? That intellectual terrorism eventually, calling them names. Some of the things that are written, for example, in the book of the Sunnah by Abdullah ibn Muhammad, for example, and obviously it's not, I don't believe it's attributed authentically to the Imam Ahmad rahimahullah radiya anhu, that Abu Hanifa, for example, because in the old days there used to be disagreements between the what they called the people of opinion, or the Hanafis, Abu Hanifa's school, and the people of Hadith at that time. So some of the things that were said, for example, Abu Hanifa was undoing Islam, destroying Islam knot by knot. Crazy stuff. Huh? It's okay to disagree, but it's good to have honor in our disagreements. I don't maintain that people now believe that, but they're still there. I told you the mistake is old, and oftentimes we still take our attitudes from the old mistakes. What does intellectual terrorism lead to? Physical violence. And first, you strip people from their right and their dignity. They're no longer human beings. They're there to get you. They're there to destroy the sunnah. Wake up, do something. So now what happens is, basically that translates to physical violence. And that actually happened in the old days. We'll go back to the seerah of Ibn Jarir, Imam Ibn Jarir al-Tabari, the Mufassir, the big Mufassir, was hit and beaten, etc., etc., etc. You all know that, and you can see that.